There you go.
Is it going to be as short as that?
Yours?
No, this whole thing. I don't know. Yeah, I think so. Oh, no, it's not. No. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, it's different.
I've got this belief that the police should get the firemen's work schedule. Firemen don't have anything to do. Police are overwhelmed, stressed.
Well, it's true, firemen just kind of sit around the button a couple times a year.
Yeah, that's why they make them all paramedics.
Geez, my friend, got full retirement, he injured himself on the job. Full retirement till today. Fireman. I mean, I said, what do you mean full retirement? This is my salary.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Okay.
Hell, average out. That's a pretty fun job.
Yeah, good.
I mean, I thought that was a joke, but it wasn't. It was,
No, I like to give the police a 24-hour shift and 48 hours.
yeah,
Rest, calm down, relax. Are we ready? All right.
we are ready, straight up.
All right, we are ready. We're going to close our executive session and open our regular public session. Today is Tuesday, June 17th, 2014, and looks like all three of us are here today. And public comment, did anybody sign up for public comment?
Has anyone signed up?
We have the phone.
We usually get notifications.
Going once? Going twice? All right, so nobody wants to say anything at all?
Nothing?
Nothing? All right, then we will close our public comment period and move on to our consent agenda.
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through C.
All right, any discussion, gentlemen?
No.
No.
Nothing? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for that. And our first presentation, looks like Tamara, you're up.
Yeah, Commissioners, the auditors were here on site for about 5 weeks this year doing their thing. And we have Andy Asbjornson and Beth Corcoran here to talk about the process and what they found.
Thank you, Commissioners. So we're here, does everyone have the exit conference handout? Okay.
I'm expecting a presentation about what they didn't find, right? Exactly.
The results are very good. So this is the annual audit of the port. We're here to just communicate the results of the audit. I'm Andy Asbjornson, I'm the local audit manager, and Beth Corcoran was your auditor in charge. She was here every day going through the records and the books and communicating with your staff. So we're here to go over what we looked at for our accountability audit and our reports, our financial statement audit, our federal audit, also our recommendations that are not included in the report. There are no recommendations within our report. There's no findings or management letters, so it's a very clean audit for the board. Agreed upon procedures, these are the passenger and facility charges that we have to give an opinion on your scheduled passenger facility charge. Excuse me. Report publication, your next scheduled audit, and customer service survey. So we would like to thank everyone at the port. It's been a great working relationship with Tamara and her staff, and we really appreciate all the assistance and timely information that we receive from the port. So I'd like to thank you for that, and I'll have Beth take us into the actual areas we looked at on the second page for our accountability audit.
So, in keeping with general auditing practices, we used a risk-based approach in setting the scope for the audit. And at the interest conference, we talked about some of the areas we would look at, and we have the areas here that we definitely looked at. And what we looked at were disbursements. We looked at accounts payable. We looked at some travel expense. We looked at payments for credit cards and fuel cards to make sure they were allowable and reviewed and the amounts matched as they should. We did some work on payroll and benefits. We looked at overtime and leave accruals to make sure that they were properly approved and valued, and we kind of recalculated them as well. These items popped up to be reviewed based on cycling. We have to look at significant areas every 3 years, and so these areas had not been looked at for a while. That's how we ended up choosing them. And so those are the areas that we looked at. We're going to issue our report, and the report does not include any findings on these areas. We do have an exit recommendation on one area that we'll get to a little bit later for fuel cards. Is there any question about that? So then Andy's now going to talk about your financial statement audit.
So this is your annual financial statement audit for fiscal year 2013. There will be an unmodified opinion provided on your financial statement report. The financial statement report will be issued in a few weeks, but it will hold today's date as the date of the financial statement report. We also provided Tamara with the CAFR letter for the CAFR, which is also dated today. So we didn't identify any material weaknesses. There was no non-compliance that was identified, no significant deficiencies, and no instances of non-compliance that were identified that would have a material effect on the financial statement. So everything was very clean. It was a clean financial statement audit as usual. We have nothing to report as aggregated or any misstatements. So another clean audit for the board. Any questions on the financial statement side? So federal compliance, we reviewed CFDA number 20106. It's the Airport Improvement Program. This is a common program that we review at the board for federal compliance. And there was no issues identified in internal controls or compliance with that program. So that will also be the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. We'll have a clean report as well. Passenger facility charges. This is another annual review. There's a schedule prepared annually that goes along with our audit report. And we audit that for accuracy and also that the funds are used for a lot of purposes. And we didn't find any issues with that as well. That would be another unmodified opinion. Any questions on the financial statements or federal or other areas we reviewed? Okay, so Beth will take us into the one exit recommendation that we have for you today.
So this is an exit recommendation regarding internal controls for fuel, tracking of fuel. This recommendation is not referenced in the audit report, it's just referenced here. What we did is we looked at the fuel cards that the port has, and we found that they had 54 cards assigned to vehicles, 2 cards for miscellaneous equipment, and then fuel tanks at the harbor and the airport. And we did find that at the fuel tanks and for the miscellaneous cards, there isn't a tracking to ensure that the fuel that you use there is for business purposes only, as far as a log or a reconciliation of expected to actual usage. So we're recommending and strengthening controls to cover this. We also looked at the review of the fuel card usage, and we saw that the invoices for the fuel cards are reviewed, and there has been turnover in that position. But as far as the documentation, there were fuel card numbers on the statements that didn't have accurate descriptions for them, so that could possibly hinder review. And we also found that there were card numbers assigned to new vehicles. So we're recommending that the documentation for that is strengthened. We also found that there was not a periodic inventory of the fuel cards to the vendor listing. We got vendor listings from the vendor and from the port and then compared them. And so we did find some discrepancies there. There were 5 cards on the vendor list that were not on the port's inventory list. So as far as the review that would take place, a lot of times what we'll see is documentation of what the reviewer found, whether they circled something or followed up on it, and the port didn't have any record of that. And so we're recommending that the port establish policies and procedures to ensure adequate oversight of these purchases. Is there any question about that?
Just one quick question. So you said there were 5 cards on the vendor list, but not on the port's list. Were those cards being used?
We reviewed the usage for those 5 cards for the entire year. They were used, and the total of the usage was about $3,000. They were port vehicles, ultimately, but it's the documentation of the inventory of the list that when it popped up,
Okay.
we immediately followed up on it to make sure that it was for port usage.
Okay.
So this would have still been reviewed within the vendor statement. It just wasn't on the inventory list for the board.
Okay.
So if there's no question about that one, we also, at the exit conference, go over any prior audit recommendations. The board has such clean audits, there's no prior finding or management letter recommendations to go over. so
That takes us into concluding. I guess if there's any questions of the audit scope, audit areas reviewed by the commissioners.
Can someone remind me, what's this audit cost?
The approximate cost is about $36,000. And that's been staying right in line with what it's been in the past. And we're projecting that for the next audit as well. It seems to be a good level of our ability to review all of the complex areas of the port and also be able to perform our financial statement audit, our federal audit, and the passenger facility charge audit.
And this is at least the second, if not third or fourth year, we've had no findings. Is that correct?
Oh, it's more than that.
A lot longer than that?
I think we had a finding a few years ago, but it's been one in the last, say, 15 years or
Yep.
so.
Wow. Oh, good work.
So your report publication should be coming out in the next couple weeks. The financial statement report will have today's date on it, along with the accountability report. We'll keep you informed as to when that report is coming out as well. Your next scheduled audit is scheduled for 2015. We'll be back to perform a very similar audit over your accountability, financial statements, federal programs, and passenger facility charges again, added to the approximate budget of the current year.
Can you guys pull the microphone up?
Oh, yeah. Is that better?
Sure.
So your customer service survey will go out to Tamara. We do like to hear feedback on ways we can improve our process, what went well, if there's anything we can do differently. You're welcome to share that with anyone else at the port, and we do like to hear that feedback back, and we share that with the team on ways we can improve our process. So that's all we have for you today. If there's any other questions.
Nope.
Okay, I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tamara, do we make this available for our website so that people can take a look at this?
I can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, not this one, but the full audit report.
The entire CAFR report will
That
be on our
that thing,
website.
so people can.
Yep.
Good luck with that, people.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So on that, Mr. Stoner's up.
That was pretty quick.
Pretty speedy.
So our second work study topic is the Wellcraft site. This is one of 12 Model Toxic Control Act sites under the umbrella of the Bellingham Bay demonstration pilot. And we're going to give the Port Commission an update today to let you know where we are on the ecologies process for this site. This is one of several sites that's really moving through the ecology pipeline this year. And what ecology does on these sites is they first perform a remedial investigation feasibility study. The RI, remedial investigation, is basically designed to define the nature and extent of contamination at the site. So what happened, where did the contamination come from, how widespread is it, what concentrations are there. And then once that is known, the next part of the RIFS is the feasibility study. What do you do about the contamination that's there? So Ecology has us put together a range of different alternative approaches to get the site back in compliance with a variety of different cleanup standards. And what they require is that all of the alternatives meet MOTCA, but they give different options. So I'll talk through some of the alternatives that are shown up for the Wellcraft site. But basically, this step in the process is designed to provide information to Ecology to support them in their next step in the process, which is to select an appropriate remedy or cleanup strategy for the site. And we're expecting that step will come later on this year. But it goes through a couple rounds of public comment. Ecology now has this draft RIFS that the port has performed under an agreed order with Ecology. It's scheduled to go out to public comment and review later on in July. I think we're shooting for July 28th as the start date for a 30-day public comment period. We've provided updates along the way to the Commission on the Wellcraft site. This is an air photo of the site that shows its location within Squalicum Harbor. The site includes both an upland portion and an in-water portion. The in-water portion was the subject of an interim action that was performed about 10 years ago. And just to give the long-range history of the site, the Weltcraft started as a port tenant in 1946, and it was a very active boatyard all the way up to its termination with that tenant in 2000, the year 2000. In 2003, the port entered into an agreed order with Ecology to perform both the RIFS and an interim action. The interim action included the in-water portion of the site, which is this portion right here. And that work was completed in 2004. It included removal of old creosote structures, removal of thousands of yards of contaminated marine sediment. At boatyards, typically that includes metals that come off bottom paints and that sort of thing. It also included the construction of a habitat mitigation bench on the outside of Squalicum Harbor breakwater, and the overall project included site redevelopment as well. At that point in time, we closed off the old marine railway, which was the cause of a lot of the in-water contamination. The project redevelopment included construction of a new bulkhead across that marine railway and installation of a couple of new finger piers that are used now for travel lift operations. So since then, we've had a new tenant in place, Seaview North, managed by Phil Reese. We've also done an in-water 5-year review of that interim cleanup, and that was demonstrated that source control since that 2004 interim action has been very, very successful. So there has been no recontamination of the in-water cleanup in the 5 years since then. That's a testament to the good job that Phil Reese is doing managing the upland portion of the boatyard. For each one of these sites, one of the things that we put together for ecology is a conceptual site model. And basically, this is typically a plan, view, and cross-section that tries to identify the potential exposures that may come from a site like this. This is an upland boatyard operation. There is there's contamination in ground and groundwater, soil and groundwater at this location, primarily from an old leaking underground storage tank that has since been removed. So the two exposure pathways that we really focus on here are the pathway of contaminants from the upland site to the in-water portion of the site. We want to protect the in-water portion of the site as basically part of Squalicum Harbor and the Bellingham Bay ecosystem. And then the other exposure pathway is to workers that work on site. So we want to prevent direct exposure to contaminated soils and also to any soil vapors that may come from that in-water historic contamination.
Hey Mike, before you move on,
Yeah.
you're showing a discharge of groundwater through a weep hole.
Yeah.
Can you explain how that process works and why you would want to do that?
Yeah, so this is very typical of a shoreline site. So what you have is groundwater moving this way. Things move downhill. So what you have is rainwater infiltration coming into the site and then moving out to the bay just by simple gravity. Out here, this is where we built a sheet pile wall as part of that interim action. We don't want to make it completely watertight because that groundwater has to get somewhere. It has to eventually get to the bay. So what we've done is we have a fill system behind the site that basically is a capture system for tidally influenced water. But there is a number of different ports through the site that, on the one hand, allow that watertight bulkhead to weep a little bit. It's also a location for us to be able to sample groundwater behind the bulkhead. So that's built in as part of the overall design.
Is there a habitat bench there? Is that represented where it says mud line at all, or is that?
Yeah, the big habitat bench that I mentioned is actually on the outside of the Squalicum Harbor breakwater.
Okay.
But even within the breakwater, we have, we've developed a design here that allows the boatyard to have navigation depth where they need it for launching boats. But the resource agencies try to take every little bit, or try to ensure that habitat is built in everywhere they can. So along the back side, or the front side of this bulkhead, there's a little bit of a shallow area that basically gets, provides some degree of habitat benefit there.
Okay.
But it's fairly minimal compared to the habitat bench that was built outside. And one of the other features that you see on this figure is a little green bioswale here. That's a bioswale that was installed to make sure that surface water captured on the site is captured and then treated before it is allowed to discharge through the bay. So there's a lot of features here that were built in to ensure that stormwater is adequately controlled and that any migration of boatyard operation surface water is prevented.
So no wake requirement, so you can just go as fast as you want in there?
Say that again, Commissioner? Sorry, I missed it. So this is a plan view of the site, and this describes our three management units. One is the marine unit, which really I won't talk about anymore moving forward because it's been done, it's met the 5-year review, and we will continue to monitor it, but no more work is done there. So there are now 2 upland site units. One is this area here that is right around that area of the old underground storage tank that was historically right here near the edge of the building. And then the rest of it is this work yard area that represents the area where boats are stored and worked on. And so we have different alternative approaches to address contamination in those 2 different areas. And apologies for the font size here. We have basically 4 different alternatives. The first alternative is designed to make sure that we have containment of any contaminants on site. And the cost of that alternative is $610,000. That is the alternative that really is shaping up to be the preferred alternative because it really breaks those 2 exposure pathways that we're most concerned about at the most cost-effective approach. What it has also in its design are provisions in the remedial design part of it to make sure that we're effectively using any aggressive treatment systems. So for example, we're talking about installing a dual phase extraction system where we may install we assume about 8 different wells that would then be used to extract any free phase liquid from the underground storage tank. That pumping system would be activated maybe every other month for a couple of years. And then from there, you get more aggressive with your alternatives. Alternative 2 gets up to $950,000. And what it has is a more aggressive soil treatment system, basically a vapor extraction system that is installed next to and under the buildings. That adds additional cost. We don't think it adds particular additional environmental benefit. The third alternative takes it one step further. This gets into more aggressive treatment of the in-ground petroleum hydrocarbons. So it would start to inject oxidation agents to really enhance the bioremediation of any petroleum hydrocarbons. This gets up over $1 million, $1.1 million. And again, there's added cost, there's some added benefit, but the disproportionate cost does not, in the RIFS, appear to be warranted. And then the fourth alternative is one that ecology always requires, and this is the most aggressive full removal option. So this is the big dig. This is where you spend $2.9 million to really go in and dig up all the contamination you can find there. But again, we think that alternative one meets MACA requirements in the most cost-effective way. So what it does is it takes advantage of some of the current site configuration. For example, if breaking the direct exposure contact pathway is a primary function of this cleanup, then the existing building slabs and the existing asphalt really do that very well. So this alternative basically looks at finding any weak points in that existing paving and repairing those to make sure that your containment is adequate.
What's the acreage on this site,
Uh,
roughly?
I don't know off the top of my head. It's probably something on the order of 2 acres of upland property.
So, Mike, are we really just trying to remediate for the effects of a leaky gasoline tank? Is that the majority of what's in there?
That's really the focus of the most aggressive part of the cleanup, yes. That residual gasoline is probably more mobile. You have vapors that you're looking at. We're also looking at perhaps some liquid gasoline in the soil zone that we can go after somewhat aggressively.
So, is it reasonable, let's see, alternative one, so is there any, so institutional controls, those would be stormwater treatment above ground, more paving and that sort of thing. Is there any sort of underground work that happens in there? Any of the, because in the other one you've got the soil, or the air sparge with some other things happening?
Yes, even on alternative one, there will be some aggressive underground treatment work. It'll be based on a phase during remedial design to figure out, for example, do you need dual phase extraction wells? If so, how many?
Okay.
Where are they best located? But yes, there will be some excavation and some aggressive digging or treatment likely in all of these alternatives.
And we've probably discussed this in the past, and I've totally forgotten. Are all 3 of these buildings shown here coming out? I know one of them's already on its way.
Yes, that's, thanks for mentioning that. That is part of the requirement under the lease with Seaview North. They're doing that somewhat gradually. The plan, though, is to take down those buildings and then use the existing foundations as outdoor stands for yard work.
Okay.
So as they do that, they will continue to improve on their stormwater management system to make sure that any operational work there ensures that contaminants are contained and cleaned up without getting into the stormwater system.
Mike, is this the last phase of this cleanup?
Yes, this is designed to be the final, most permanent remedy.
And how long ago did this start? I mean, this has been going on for how long?
It's been going on for quite a while. This is one of the sites that was identified early under the Bellingham Bay demonstration pilot. So that's back in the late 1990s. We've prioritized all that work with ecology, and we focused on a high priority part of this, which was the interim work, which was completed in 2004. Once that work was completed, and we did the 5-year review, because there's not an active migration of contaminants to the bay, this site was a little bit down on the priority list, but it's worked its way up to the top, and now we're ready to go out there and finish the cleanup. So then, briefly, next steps. Like I mentioned, we're expecting ecology to start a 30-day public comment period on the draft RIFS beginning on July 28th. Once they go through that, the purpose of that will be to make sure that we didn't miss anything in this document, and that we've got it framed right. If so, then we'll work with ecology to move into the next stage, which will be to confirm the selection of a preferred cleanup remedy, build that into a cleanup action plan and consent decree, which we expect to be prepared for public review later this fall. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Stay tuned, and we'll let you know when the comment period on this starts.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
And moving on to facilities, Mr. Hergesheimer. No, it's not going to be John. Is it going to be John? It's going to be John.
This is a rather long motion. Authorize the executive director to execute a contract with Strider Construction Company for the Multiple Utility Improvement Project 2014 in the amount of $800,212.19, plus a contingency of $99,022 for a total authorized contract amount of $899,234.19. Also amend the 2014 capital improvement budget as follows. For bid Schedule A, for the Alderwood Stormwater Detention Pond Improvements, combined budget 2014 line items 66 and 247 for a single budget line item in the amount of $301,095. For bid Schedule B, Mitchell Way Force Main Replacement, establish a new budget in the amount of $175,000. For bid Schedule C, for the C Street Sanitary Sewer Service Replacements, establish a new budget in the amount of $44,000. For bid Schedule D, for the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park Water Main Replacement, Phase 2, combined budget line items 150, 151, and 152, and increase the total by $242,963 for a single budget line item in the amount of $940,000.
I must have the record for the longest
That was the longest.
statement of action
Heard.
requested, but the reason is these are 4 separate projects that were combined under one bid schedule, and so those 4 separate projects each had for the audit purposes, to track the budget changes that are required to put this into action. So I thought Dan did a great job. Thanks. So this issue before you today is to authorize the award of the bid for Strider Construction. The bids were opened on June 2nd. Strider Construction was the lowest bidder, and the results are attached in your packets. You see the bid spreads were pretty close. The port engineer's estimate was $810,000, and the low bid was approximately $800,000. The project as bid, as I said, is a compilation of 4 separate projects which consist of similar type of work. The projects were combined into one bid package for efficiency and for scope of work, for larger scope and better prices. The projects in their scope are listed as follows. And again, this is quite lengthy, but I tried to just hit the key elements of each one. And they are in one way they're totally separate projects, even though the types of work, piping and utility, is similar. So bid Schedule A, the Alderwood Storm Detention Pond, is the second pond on the west side of the airport. The southwest detention pond was improved several years ago and provides most of the drainage flow for the airport. About 2/3 of the airport drains to the southwest pond. This Alderwood pond accepts drainage from the southern and the southwest portion of the runway, as well as some undeveloped and partially developed property in the industrial area around Williamson Way and Soundway. So the work is to replace the outfall structure and piping, which adds greater storage capacity to the pond, to repair areas of existing berm and provide new access to the pond for maintenance, which currently does not exist, and the primary cost of this project is basically clearing of the trees on the top of the berm and providing fencing. We are not, since we're increasing the flow and increasing the storage capacity, we want to be more protective of the ponded water to keep persons out of that area. Right now, the pond really doesn't store any water. It's more of an open wetland that that fills and drains very quickly. So we are changing that to add greater capacity. So because of that, we're going to have water deeper for a longer period of time. Schedule B, Mitchell Way force main replacement. The work is to replace the existing undersized 4-inch diameter sewer force main with an 8-inch line. And this replacement of this is a city system, but the reason the port's replacing it is that the upsized line is needed due to the growth at the airport, the growth of the terminal and the hotel, and the plane apron and the de-icing facility has expanded, and that's all causing impact to the sewer system, as well as the current or presently or recently approved general binding site plan number 2 that is slated for setting us up for future development of the undeveloped parcels. So all that adds sewer capacity requirements. Bid Schedule C is C Street sanitary sewer service replacements. The port has 3 parcels down on C Street that the City of Bellingham has advised us that do not meet current requirements, and so we need to replace the sanitary sewer taps and the service lines to those 3 facilities. And they are between Roeder and Maple Avenue. The bid Schedule D is the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park water main replacement Phase 2. There's been several phases of this project, and this last final phase is to continue the work begun in Phase 1 that was performed in 2013, both design and then 2013 Phase 1 construction. And this work, Phase 2 work, it will result in the complete replacement of all the in-ground water system at the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park. The lines are failing due to age and corrosion, and the result of that has been recently a major blowout of the water main, which has caused disruption of service, has disturbed this asphalt surface, mainly in the Seaview Boatyard area. So this then also fixes those areas that were damaged. So those are the 4 projects. They're all different, although they're similar type of work, and they all have different budgets, different between real estate, infrastructure, and airport. So in order to do the work, there's a couple of things that need to be noted. One is these budgets are either all over the amounts that were specifically budgeted for the line items, or there was no budget established in the 2014 budget. And the reason was 2 of the projects only came up this year as a necessity. So I'll just briefly go through those. Bid Schedule A, Alderwood Stormwater Pond, was basically 2 budget line items, one for design, one for construction. The estimated project costs are in excess of the construction budget, but if you combine the design and the construction budget together, then we are still under the expected cost of the project and then within the budget. So the recommendation then is to combine those 2 into 1. For bid Schedule B, the force main at Mitchell Way, the work that the port is proposing to do is to upgrade the main. It has currently no budget line item, but in discussions with the city of Bellingham, they have agreed that they would provide fixed generators at all 3 of the lift stations, sewer lift stations that support the airport developed area. And if they, by them doing that and us increasing the force main capacity, then that will ultimately provide all the sewer capacity required even in a power outage. As you may recall, the terminal is fully has full generation capacity in a power outage. The ARF station as well, and the hotel is planning the same thing. So they can be up and running in a power outage, except if the sewers are out, then the system could be shut down. And so the city is stepping in to install those 3 generators at their 3 facilities. So this sewer force maintenance are part of the work. So we need, in that case, to establish a new budget line item of $175,000 to do this work. Bid Schedule C, there is no budget line item. This just came up as late as end of March on discovering that this needed to be done. And so the port has been following the procedures of the RCWs to get this out to bid, following the procedures for public bidding, and get this out as soon as possible and get that situation resolved. And for that, we would need a new budget item of $44,000 to cover that cost. And finally, the bid schedule D, the FMIP water line, there's 3 budget line items that were in the budget over the last 2 years. If we roll all 3 of those together and add almost $243,000 to the total of those budgets, then the project can be fully funded and we can proceed.
So that last one comes to over $1 million.
The last one is $940,000 total. So the total budget would be $940,000, and when we add the previously budgeted amounts of about $700,000 and add the $240,000 to it, we get $940,000 as a total budget. Yeah, that's a good point. Previously, the budget number was right near $700,000 for all 3 budgets. And it's a similar work. It was just the way it's divided up into design, phase 1 and phase 2 was not quite equal. And then the final costs based on review by the city fire department, fire marshal's office, we had to add some more lines, more hydrants to the project.
Okay.
I will say also that once the Schedule D is completed, again, it will be a total brand-new water system, ductile iron pipe with a poly wrap liner and HDPE, so it's corrosion-proof, domestic service to serve all those buildings, including new fire hydrants, new pressure valves, new backflow preventers.
Corrosion proof and not just corrosion resistant.
HDPE is
Plastic.
corrosion proof.
Yeah.
It's corrosion proof.
I was kidding him.
Any questions?
Did we do some improvement already on the water line in Fairhaven, Marina, when it broke?
Yes, Commissioner. We did a temporary repair, and so that's been done, so that the facilities are back in service as we speak.
But that's all going to be replaced?
That's going to be totally replaced, yes. The repair that was done that caused the blowout was just a temporary fix. We did do a phase 1 replacement, which was done last year in order to get Building 7 back into service. There were some issues there on that water system, so we needed to do phase 1 ahead of doing this whole thing this year as one phase in 2014. And so that was done. Some of that work will be retained as improvement to serve that building, but some of that system will unfortunately need to just be abandoned. It was done as an interim fix.
So, John, one quick question. So, FMIP, different areas are settling. How do you manage that? Because some of this pipe is going to be in areas where it's going to be settling, right?
That's a great question. Yeah, the area in FMIP is like a lot of our waterfront. It's random fill, filled years and years ago. We don't know what kind of fill it was or what else might be in there besides fill dirt material. But the products that are being used, like the HDPE pipe is very tough. It will stand a lot of settlement. As far as the water main system, it's ductile iron pipe, and it is very tough, and it will stand the test of time, which is why it's being used over PVC or some other type of pipe. And as settlements occur, if things get extreme, there may be a case or two where we have to go back in and readjust some pipe. But it has settled for a long time now, so I don't expect a lot more settlement. But what's out there is certainly very rough.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
Nope.
No. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
You get the next one too, looks like.
Authorize the Executive Director to execute PSA Amendment Number 3 of the Professional Services Agreement with Associated Project Consultants Incorporated for the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park Water Main Replacement Phase 2 project in the amount of $82,300 plus a contingency of $8,230 for a total revised authorized contract amount of $194,605.
That was a lot shorter. This goes hand in hand with your previous action. This is for Associated Project Consultants who were the consultants for the design and the construction management for Phase 1 of the FMIP water line. This is for funds to have them complete this work for Phase 2. Phase 2 is much more involved than Phase 1 was for two reasons. One, it's probably 90, it's got probably 9 times the amount of pipe that Phase 1 had in it. It's a much longer duration, much more complicated project. We're going to be trenching through a lot of soil that is, again, unknown for structural capacity and for contamination, and so they will be on site doing continuous monitoring ahead of the contractor in order to determine if that material can be reused. So the normal costs, I will say, of the construction management in this case are higher, or they're higher than normal because of that needing to closely watch those soils. But by doing that, we may be able to save quite a bit of money on being able to direct the contractor to directly reuse or to stockpile on site and then reuse materials that are neither contaminated or are unstructural soils. So instead of just saying, well, let's just assume it's all bad and send it all off, pay for all that hauling and all that disposal cost at an expensive landfill, and then paying for import, we've opted to do this constant review. We're also going to be, this time, we're going to be using something called ground penetrating radar to go ahead of the contractor to find the myriad of abandoned lines we expect to see down there on that site, to be able to identify ahead of time so the contractor will know those lines are active, those lines are not active, and how he then can respond to it so he can be efficient and get the job done early as possible for two things. One is for the cost that he's charging us to do the work, and the other is to get the site wrapped up, back in service, and not impact the tenants any more than we have to. I will also say that the schedule is set up so the Seaview Boat Yard will be back in service. It's a contract requirement that they will be back in service completely with all the piping and all the asphalt completed within that yard by August 29th. Which is something we've been working with them on for the duration of this project, because they start getting very busy in September. So the only thing they'll have to do there would be to go back in after the system is active and pull out the fire hydrants, because the whole system in this case has to be left in place, the old system, until the new system is completely in place, energized, approved, and tested. Any questions on this one?
No.
No.
All right, thanks, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Thank you,
All
Commissioners.
right. Mr. Mitchell.
A commission motion authorizing the executive director to execute documents required to modify the terms of the loan American Nettings and Fabrics Incorporated has with the Port of Bellingham EDA, or Economic Development Agency, revolving loan fund.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a good news story I'm glad to bring to you today. And a great example of a program that we administer that's working as it's supposed to and very well. This company, as it says, in 2011 came to the program and received a loan. And at the time, this program is for companies that are a little higher risk. Commercial lenders aren't going to necessarily lend to them. They might lend them a little bit, but not as much as the company might like. So in this example, this company actually, at the time, no commercial lenders were willing to talk to them at all. So we went ahead and made the loan to them. And since 2011, they've grown. They've entered new export markets, which has been a big mandate of the program too, or the Washington State, I should say, to grow exports. They're now selling into Peru and Chile. The company itself is kind of an interesting niche. You never understand or think of what somebody will create. These guys make nettings and fabrics, from the home gardener up to vineyards is kind of their big market, where you can say, I need 50% shade cloth for my vineyards, and they will produce that for you. 75%, 90%, whatever it is. And the seasonality of it here in the Northern Hemisphere was really kind of weighing them down, and that's when they said, wait a minute, there's all these vineyards down in South America. They entered that market, they've been very successful, to the point now that WeCube is willing to give them a $75,000 line of credit to continue to grow their business. But in order to do that, WeCube wants us, we currently are in first lien position on all of their assets except their foreign accounts receivable. And WeCube would like us to take a second position on their domestic accounts receivable up to the amount that the company has borrowed against their line of credit at any given time. So we need to modify the loan, so WeCube will go ahead and do that. In a way, it actually strengthens our position too, because with that line of credit, they'll be buying raw materials and more inventory, where we still have first lien position on that. So it's kind of covered that way too.
Did they make a netting that will keep deer out of a garden?
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do.
Does it have guns mounted on it? Or?
Afraid not.
John, how much was the original loan?
Right now, they have a loan with us. It's around, I believe, $95,000 is what it is. It's actually two loans is what they have.
Are they a subsidiary of a bigger company? Because I'm
No, it's actually a husband and wife.
trying to remember why I know this company.
They're located up in Grandview Industrial Park area. And yeah, it's actually a Canadian couple that have moved here and started the business. And they've grown from just the two of them now to 8 total employees.
John, will you give us a quick overview of where this money comes from, just so folks are aware this isn't port money?
Yeah, thank you. These are federal dollars. It's absolutely federal dollars that back in the mid-'80s, when it was the Fourth Corner Economic Development Group, they applied to this program through the federal government, the Economic Development Administration, and received a grant. It was $300,000 of grant money at the time. Then you have to abide by very strict federal regulations to make these loans and to do this work. And we are just continuing we inherited the fund from them and are continuing to administer it on behalf of the Economic Development Administration, the federal government. So we report to them twice a year. I work with Tamara getting those reports out and continuing to put this money out into the business community. And the reason that from the federal side is about job creation. Hence, we're able to make loans to maybe a little riskier company and that type of thing, because the federal government, they want to create the jobs side of it. So that's what it is. It's all federal dollars.
So good?
So good?
So good, yeah.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. One last item. Judy's up on this one.
A motion by the commission approving the third amendment to the amended and restated capital ground lease with Bellwether Gate D LLC.
Thank you, Diane. Commissioners, the Port and Bellwether Gate D entered into a lease in October of 2010 for construction of Building D. In 2013, the second amendment to that lease was executed to extend the commencement date to May 1, 2015, with the substantial completion to October 31, 2016. And as consideration for that extension, $30,000 was due by April 1. Due to market conditions as well as economic factors, this third amendment would extend that $30,000 payment to on or before December 31st, 2014. All other terms and conditions do remain the same. And would address any questions that there may be. Staff recommends approval.
So we've had a lot of discussion about this particular build-out with Bellwether Gate. And so I wanted this to be on the regular agendas in case Mr. Robbins had any questions, because a lot of this has happened before he was here. But I do want to ask the commission how much further we want to continue this, because we've been hearing the same thing for many years now. At least I've been here for 4.5, and I'm hearing the same thing. Market conditions can't, so we keep bumping this down the road. And not necessarily saying at this point that I'm unwilling to continue bumping it down the road, but I just do want the commission to sort of have a conversation about how much longer we're to continue to do this, and maybe have a conversation about moving on at some point. So for now, I think I'm comfortable saying, yeah, we'll bump this down the road a little bit further, but maybe you guys might want to weigh a little bit and say, okay, 2015, we got to get this building going. What are the odds of that happening, et cetera, et cetera?
How long has it been going?
This would be the second extension. And
That's just for this one.
for this
Right.
one.
Yeah.
That is correct.
And notwithstanding, please, I hope nobody misunderstands me. I know this has been a challenge, especially building this out at this point. So, I think this company's performed very well, and I've told people that in the past when asked about this particular project. But at some point, we have to say, okay, now we need to get this moving somehow. Right.
Understand. And Mr. Ebenall has invested substantial funds and is refinancing and does anticipate paying this sooner than that date.
I want to make sure we
to
understand
understand.
as well that we're not asking the commission to extend the start of construction.
Right.
That was already done. This is just an extension of the payment that he was
Right.
going to give us for that extension you previously granted.
Right.
So just so we all understand.
Yeah, I would.
Well,
try.
what's our choice if we say no now?
It's got to pay, right? That's the option. If we say
That-
no, then he's got to pay right away.
Well, the option then becomes, commissioners, that we would put the lease in default. And I need to advocate for our tenant on this. We have, Bellwether Gate has upwards of $20 million into our Bellwether project. And the commission has been incredibly nimble in helping him get through this and get his buildings leased. And this is just one more request for him for $30,000, for an extension on the $30,000. And I am having the discussion with him about the future of Site D. I don't have a definitive answer for you today, but we are having that discussion.
You good? Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our regular business. I think Mr. Robbins has something he'd like to bring up.
Well, under new business, I'd really like to thank the port and the staff for the wonderful tour that they did with the Watkin Business Alliance of both the airport and the waterfront. It was really a pleasure. There were over 100 people that attended that, business people and business folks, and they really enjoyed it. And I was proud to be part of the port to see the wonderful tour that you did for those folks, and congratulations. I think it was just really, really well done.
I would agree with that. I did not go on the airport tour, but on the harbor tour, and it was well done, well explained.
Can't add to that. I do have two requests. One for Mr. Seeger. What's the name of the street in front of the plywood plant?
Schultz Way.
Schultz, that's it. I can never remember that one. So, can you help me recall? I don't think this was we did discuss it recently, but I don't think it's in any of our plans to make upgrades to that street anytime soon. Is that correct?
The only plan is to do some striping on it this
Yeah.
this year to kind of tune it up a little bit, but there's no plans in our capital budget to do any kind of reconstruction.
So I'll bring this up. I'll bring this up now. Then I got a call from Mayor Linville about potential neighborhood petition from, I guess, nearby neighbors that want us to do something about that street. So if we can maybe have a conversation about something. I don't know what that means, but.
Commissioner, we got a petition as well.
Did you get that?
Friday afternoon, I
Yeah.
believe it came
Okay.
in late. So we'll be distributing that to you this
Sure.
week, and you'll also have it. I think there's, I don't know, how many signatures on it? 30 maybe?
Yeah.
30 signatures about on it. But yeah, we got the same petition.
I know
sheet.
at our budget retreat, we kind of had a short conversation. It's a weird street because we own it, but it's really a city street. I mean, it's not really,
It's
it's
our street.
port property, yeah.
And of course, the problem is on each side of it, Seaview coming down the slope and Squalicum Way or the end of Road are city streets.
Mhm.
So there's 5,000 cars a day that use that.
Our tenant doesn't have 5,000 cars a day.
No. That's what I'm
So-
saying. Maybe the city might want to weigh in. I don't know. Yeah, that's on video, right?
So the port has done some, we've already done some cost estimating and so forth, but it's a major project to reconstruct that.
Sure. So we would be able to put together a response to folks so they have an idea of what we can expect to do in the future. All right. And then one other question, because of our conversation about the airport today, I was wondering, can we get an update on what where the city is in the progress of the airport annexation? We don't have to do it today, obviously, but I know that they're taking some significant amount of time on finishing that off. Awesome. That's it for me. Anything from you, sir?
I was just going to ask Rob or Fred, what's the final decision that was on the Blaine Pier, that road? Is that a couple years down the road? Was that settled with Blaine, or?
No, I'm not sure it's settled with Blaine. I think we committed to doing the engineering and feasibility work for rebuilding the bulkhead. We have the monies to do that, and we're starting that process now. But until we know what the result of those studies are, we can't make any further recommendations.
Did I read correctly in the update then that the street's just going to be closed? Is that the plan?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've put more parking stalls in. We've done some dock boxes, a porta potty, just trying to, and a couple benches even for people to sit on the way out there. So we're trying to make it convenient for folks to still use
Been
the
asked
pier.
several times, and so that, anyway, that,
Yeah, until we get the results of that study,
Right.
Jim, I don't think we can make suggestions as to what to do.
okay.
But we are working on getting that engineering report done, so.
That's it.
I had one other question for Director Stahl. Does Zed Blue getting any closer to a web locker?
I haven't gotten any updates recently.
I noticed the signs were up that some of the derelict stuff had to leave by June 1st. Here we are, the 17th. Has anything transpired?
There's been much wailing and gnashing of teeth and a lot of stuff going on. So it is looking better over there. There's still some stuff that's tagged, and it's pretty fluid because you have vessels coming in, they're taking gear off, they're moving gear out. And so it's one of those things I don't think that is ever done, but the staff is really ratcheted up their attention to it. Our tenants know that, and so things are getting better.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, nothing further. That's it. Anything from anybody else at all? Nothing? All right. That's it. Thank you all for coming today.
See with some friends and their